Miles Luna was still technically the show's head writer for season 14, and I actually plan on doing a smaller video dedicated to analyzing a trilogy of episodes he wrote for it, because their failings reveal something really interesting about how he approaches storytelling. I'll bet the 10 of you who actually watched that video figured I would never make this follow-up analysis. If I'm being honest, neither did I. But here we are!
Hey, look at us.
Look at us. Huh? Who would have thought?
Not me.
Since it's been a while, here's a semi-brief recap of all the essential information. Red vs. Blue is an American web series created by Bernie Burns and produced by Rooster Teeth, a once beloved independent digital media company that is now mired with countless corporate scandals and endless controversies regarding human resources. After writing 10 incredible seasons, Bernie stepped down as head writer and named then-intern Miles Luna as his successor. Luna would ultimately oversee 4 years' worth of Red vs. Blue, whilst concurrently serving as a lead writer for Rooster Teeth's up-and-coming flagship series, RWBY. After season 14 wrapped, Luna officially stepped down from writing RVB in order to reduce his workload and focus solely on making RWBY. Every subsequent season of Red vs. Blue has sucked, and while RWBY was never great to begin with, it definitely lost whatever charm it had for a myriad of reasons. Dozens of YouTubers have pointed out the flaws with RWBY's writing. It's an easy target that you can approach from any number of angles, and someday I'll throw my own hat into that ring. But I want to revisit Red vs. Blue first because these shows shared a common denominator for nearly half a decade.
Wait. Explain what you're doing here, Miles.
Fuck you, Daniel.
Over the years, Miles has endured a lot of unnecessary harassment for his work, and you can tell that it's taken a toll on him.
People will make a comment, maybe it's like a criticism or something, and you go, oh, okay, yeah, that's a fair critique. But you don't want to listen to them because of the way they said it.
I don't want to contribute to the mean-spirited criticism that follows him around like a dark cloud. I've actually had the pleasure of meeting him, and he seems like a really nice guy, but I do want to discuss some of his writing failures because the creative process fascinates me, and failure always provides the best learning opportunities. H-Bomber Guy is right. RWBY is disappointing. But you know what else was disappointing? Red vs. Blue Season 14.
What the hell was that?
I think it was a window?
Season 14 is an anthology of stories written by both Rooster Teeth employees and outsiders to the production studio. When compiled together, these 24 episodes are essentially a collection of audition tapes for the show's next head writer. Speaking as someone who watched this season air week to week, there is very little to get excited about here. The only fun I had was learning that the female version of Griff from Get Bent was voiced by Amber Benson, because for me, all roads lead back to Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Season 14's most underwhelming arc is a trilogy of episodes Miles Luna wrote: Club, Call, and Consequences. These episodes are a perfect encapsulation of his strengths and shortcomings as a writer. The opening scene contains some excellent visual storytelling. A fun quirk of using Halo games to make the bulk of your show is that you never actually see any of the main characters' faces. Who are these people? And why should we care about their club escapades? Then, with a simple but effective lighting trick, their identities are wordlessly revealed to the audience. It's Locus and Felix, the mercenaries Miles created for the Chorus trilogy. They're fairly popular among the fanbase, and since Miles voices Felix, it makes sense why he decided to write a prequel about their prior exploits. The ensuing fight is snappy and stylized. It's not great by RVB standards, but there's a refreshing sense of rhythm to it that most Rooster Teeth fights lack these days. At the end of the first episode, we're introduced to a third mercenary, Cyrus. During my initial watch-through, I remember thinking to myself, okay, this guy's a goner. He's never mentioned in the series proper, and he's the only bounty hunter with something to lose. His wife Megan is expecting him to return home. Cyrus's untimely death would be tragic, but it would also explain why Locus and Felix's relationship devolved into such an unhealthy and unbalanced power dynamic. Cyrus's level-headedness counteracts Felix's impulsivity and Locus's cold pragmatism, and without this buffer, their partnership would quickly deteriorate. The three men are trying to capitalize on a lucrative bounty, but when their hostage's criminal record is wiped, they try to ransom him back to his father, a local crime lord named Ruben Lozano. Unfortunately for our mercenaries, Ruben doesn't actually care about his son.
If you want the truth, killing him would be doing me a favor.
The final episode in this trilogy culminates in a big action sequence, and I kept waiting for Cyrus to bite the dust. But he survives, and the three men drive off into the sunrise together. Also, Ruben was apparently bluffing during their phone call, so his final words are a bit contradictory.
You shouldn't have brought family into it.
But you did first.
So what was the point of showing us this story? The short answer is, there was no point, and that's the core issue with Miles' writing. His episodes are functional, but they're not meaningful because he doesn't understand the deeper implications of the topics he invokes. The voiceover leading into this trilogy of episodes asks a popular philosophic question. Normally I would just let the clip speak for itself, but I don't feel like fighting Rooster Teeth's bogus copyright claims today, so I'll just read it to you. Serious question, dude. If you could go back in time, would you kill Hitler? Right now you're thinking, well, duh, absolutely. That guy was kind of a dick dude. But what if you met him when he was just a kid? when all he wanted to do was go to art school and paint pictures of dogs. You think he could still do it? Murder him in cold blood next to the oil paintings and schnauzers? Point I'm trying to make is, not everyone starts off evil, dude. People change over time, sometimes for the better, and sometimes, well. Okay, a couple of things here. 1, I am tired of hearing the "did you know Hitler wanted to go to art school?" factoid. Despite what some people may think, this anecdote doesn't make the question of killing Hitler nuanced or deep. It's a shallow observation in a raging sea of tragedy and horror that implies if art was easier, then 6 million innocent people wouldn't have been systemically murdered.
Yikes, my dude.
2, this voiceover implies that the following story will show us Locus and Felix's bastardization arc. How did these two soldiers become ruthless, self-interested, genocidal mercenaries? By the end of this trilogy, we still don't know the answer to that question. Ironically enough, the episode titled Consequences is entirely devoid of them. All 3 men walk away relatively unharmed, and the night's events don't prompt any substantial change in our characters. They have no qualms with killing a ton of people, and they're mostly just concerned with turning a profit. That's not any different from the 2 men we meet in season 11. It's worth noting that writing a prequel is hard. If your audience already knows how the story ends, then how do you keep them invested? The threat of death can't be used to raise the stakes, so tension has to be created elsewhere. At the end of the day, a good prequel should provide some form of context that enriches the existing narrative, and a great example of this comes from Red vs. Blue itself. By the end of season 8, almost all of the freelancers are dead. We didn't get to know much about them, but we could tell they were cool characters with complex histories. York had a grudge against Wyoming. North and South were twin siblings with severe issues. And Maine was a force of nature our protagonists barely managed to defeat. Seasons 9 and 10 provided the perfect opportunity to explore their backstories because their core theme is the very concept of memory. These flashbacks are phenomenal. You already know how each of these characters die, but Bernie Burns retroactively makes you care that they're dead. This is achieved through a combination of great writing and stellar animation, and I'm not just referring to the godly fight scenes. In order to humanize the freelancers during their limited screen time, Bernie lets us see their faces, and this expedites the bonding process for viewers. Comparatively, Locus and Felix's face reveals are cool, but they don't serve a true narrative purpose aside from fan service. The flashbacks Bernie wrote elevated this silly little comedy into a Greek tragedy, and it's one of the best things I've ever had the pleasure of watching. Each freelancer dies because they never overcame their fatal flaw. North was too trusting. South wasn't trusting enough. York had physical and emotional blind spots. These badass super soldiers were actually victims, collateral damage from a cruel and twisted experiment. They were all friends at one point, but the illusion of competition turned them into enemies and tore them apart. This is what makes the Reds and Blues different. They learned to see past these fake divides and become a begrudging found family. Stories like this are great at prompting self-reflection. What's my fatal flaw? And how many people have I pushed away because I viewed them as competitors? You don't tend to walk away from a Miles Luna story asking questions like this. Odds are, you're probably too busy wondering when the story actually takes place because Miles doesn't believe in writing official timelines.
How much time has taken place between the end of Volume 3 and the end of Volume 4?
We try to keep it as ambiguous as possible because, like, anytime you bring in, like, official dates and stuff, that's when plot holes can come up.
Yeah.
And if you just kind of keep it vague, then you don't worry about the plot holes and you just focus on the story and stuff.
Miles isn't untalented. He's just not great at conveying information, which is a considerable problem if you're the lead writer of 2 popular web series. I get the impression that Miles is a guy who wants to be a storyteller, but has never been forced to examine why he wants to tell stories. When I was in college, I had to write something called an artist's statement. It forces you to assess your deeper creative motivations, and it helps your audience form a more nuanced connection with your work. If you want to be a writer, then I suggest crafting a statement of your own. You'll learn a lot about yourself in the process. It's not like Bernie Burns set out to write one of the greatest stories ever, of all time. He simply had a list of jokes he wanted to tell, and as that list expanded, so too did his vision for the series. Comedy is a clear and valid storytelling purpose, but at its best, Red vs. Blue is about so much more than that. It's about creating your own meaning in a meaningless universe, and the power of letting things go before grief takes over and warps your most cherished memories. Miles Luna didn't become the head writer of Red vs. Blue because he had a vision for the show's future. He became the head writer because Bernie wanted his show to continue without him, and Miles just happened to be the person Bernie picked to carry on his legacy. Miles has even gone on record to say that he didn't know what he was doing for the bulk of season 11, and that season's poor pacing reflects this general sense of directionlessness. Now, this is just a theory, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure they blew most of their budget on this trilogy of episodes because the rest of season 14 is, for lack of a better term, cheap. Fans have wanted an episode about 479er for years, and it got cut in favor of a hobbled-together recruitment video, an unfunny film noir satire, and a couple of episodes that only make sense if you're familiar with Funhouse. I'd be more forgiving of budget mismanagement if the content we got was worthwhile, but that's just not the case here. There's only one story arc that's worth revisiting from season 14, and it's the Triplets duology written by Shannon McCormick. These episodes are funny and freelancer-centric, but they also explore some classic RVB themes. Ohio, Iowa, and Idaho rank dead last on the leaderboard, but they rank first in their ability to work as a team, not unlike our favorite Reds and Blues. Ohio desperately wants a purpose in life, but when she realizes the people in power aren't going to assign her one, she decides to create her own meaning like an existentialist icon. If Red vs. Blue is ever to continue, I'd love to follow these 6 characters and see how their stories progress. Give me the acquaintances to enemies to friends to lovers sapphic slow burn we deserve, you cowards! These 2 episodes have a clear, discernible theme, which is something the Merc Trilogy could have greatly benefited from. Miles could have explored the pitfalls of being a vigilante or the difficulties soldiers have returning to civilian life. But what we get instead is substanceless fluff where the character he voices gets to look cool. Hey, what's this picture of Jean doing here? Club Call and Consequences aren't bad, but they could have been so much better, and that's what frustrates me. So why bother analyzing a disappointing trilogy of episodes from a forgotten season that aired nearly 7 years ago? The short answer is, I do not control the hyperfixation controls me. The long answer is a tad more complicated. Like I mentioned earlier, I've started working on a RWBY project, and during my rewatch, I realized that all of its writing pitfalls were present in Miles' seasons of Red vs. Blue. Unclear storytelling purpose? Check. Writing that protects our protagonists from any real consequences? Check. Wasting most of the budget on a superfluous animated trilogy? Check. RWBY is underwhelming on its own merits, but when you add Red vs. Blue back into the narrative, these failures become a regrettable pattern, and as an aspiring writer, I see plenty of things to learn from here. Despite all of my critiques, I still have a lot of respect for Miles, and he actually wrote one of the greatest episodes of season 14. The Triplets may have the best overall arc, but Caboose's Guide to Making Friends is beautiful. This 4-minute, barely animated short made me tear up with its simple message. No matter how many friends you do lose, you can always make more. You can tell this line comes from a real place of sincerity, and that's what makes the writing so effective. This episode is efficient and purposeful, and it's worth commending because successfully communicating with your audience is no small feat. The human mind is vast and unknowable. There are millions of words and hundreds of languages, but conveying our ideas to one another is extremely difficult. We can never fully express what's going on in our heads, and being a writer essentially means that the process of trying is your daily job. Despite your best efforts, you won't always succeed. But that's okay. Not everything you create will be great, but if you treat each creation like a learning opportunity, you'll find the overall process more rewarding. The Blu-ray disc comes with all of these collectible trading cards from the Merc Trilogy, and I just have to ask, who are these for? Who wants these?